The folder came off of the counter like it had been thrown papers fanning across the marble floor of Sterling National Bank, sliding under the feet of 40 strangers. The young banker didn't even watch them fall. He leaned over the counter, looked at the man in the worn canvas jacket, and said it loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "You need a loan, not respect." The laughter started before the last page settled. Ethan Carter didn't shout. He knelt down, picked up every sheet, and told his 8-year-old daughter he was sorry she had to see that. What nobody in that building knew, not the banker, not the manager, not the guard reaching for his radio, was whose name was on the deed to the floor they were standing on. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Subscribe and stay with me, because what happens next took 3 months to unravel. The alarm went off at 4:40 in the morning, same as it had for 9 years, and Ethan Carter shut it off before the second beep, so it wouldn't wake his daughter down the hall. He sat on the edge of the bed for a minute in the dark. That was a habit he'd picked up after Sarah died, a full minute doing nothing, letting the day arrive instead of chasing it. His accountant would have told him it was the most expensive minute in the state of Ohio. Ethan didn't care. Some things you don't put a rate on. He made coffee black. He made 2 lunches, one of which he wouldn't eat. He put a note in the smaller one. "You're braver than you think." Dad, the same 9 words he'd been writing since she was in kindergarten, because she'd told him once that she read it at the lunch table when the noise got too loud. At 6:15, Lily came out of her room, already dressed, backpack on, hair mostly brushed. "You're up early, kiddo." "You said I could come with you today." "I said maybe." "You said maybe in the voice that means yes." Ethan laughed into his coffee. "I've got to work on that voice." "It's too late," Lily said, climbing onto the stool. "I already cracked it." She was 8 years old, and she talked like a woman of 40, and every single time she did it, Ethan felt his wife standing behind him in the kitchen. Sarah used to say, "Cracked it exactly like that." Same flat little landing on the end of the word. Their daughter had been 3 when Sarah died. 3. There was no way she remembered. And yet... "Where are we going anyway?" Lily asked. "Downtown. A bank." "Are we getting money?" "No." "Are we giving money?" Ethan reached over and tapped the end of her nose. "We're listening?" "To what?" "To how people talk to each other when they don't think it matters." Lily considered that. "That sounds boring." "It's the least boring thing in the world," Ethan said. "Eat your toast." The truck was a 2009 Ford with 214,000 miles on it and a driver's door that only locked if you lifted it while you pushed. Ethan had been offered a new one, offered technically 41 new ones by a dealership group whose financing his company had underwritten, and he'd said no every time. And every time the man on the phone had laughed like it was a bit. It wasn't a bit. It was the truck he'd been driving when Sarah got sick. It was the truck he'd slept in outside the hospital for 11 nights because visiting hours ended at 8 and he couldn't make himself drive home to a house with her coffee cup still in the sink. You don't trade that in? You just don't. He wore the jacket for the same reason. Canvas brown elbows worn through to the lining, a burn mark on the right cuff from a welding job in 2004. His head of corporate communications had once asked him very carefully if he'd consider a refresh of the personal presentation before a photo shoot. Ethan had said, "Sure, refresh the photo shoot right out of my calendar." They stopped for gas on Route 42. Lily counted the pumps out loud. Ethan stood there with the nozzle in his hand and thought about the folder on the passenger seat. It was 3/4 of an inch thick, and it had taken his people 4 months to assemble, and it had started with something almost too small to notice. A ratio. Branch 14, the downtown flagship on Whitaker Street, the one with the marble and the brass and the mural of the founders, was approving small business loans at a rate that looked perfectly normal from a distance. But when his analyst broke it out by zip code, then by first-time applicant, then by whether the applicant had walked in versus applied online, something ugly crawled out from underneath the numbers. If you walked in the front door of Branch 14, looking like money, your application moved. If you walked in the front door of Branch 14, looking like Ethan Carter, Your application went into a queue that, statistically speaking, was a hole in the ground. Not a rule. Nothing in writing. Nothing you could put in front of a regulator. Just 140 small decisions a day, each one deniable, each one shruggable, each one made by a person who would swear on their mother's grave they had never discriminated against anyone in their life. And on top of that, complaint records. 41 formal complaints filed at Branch 14 over 18 months. Corporate had a record of 9. Ethan had read that line 3 times. 9. His CFO had wanted to send a team, suits, badges, a conference room, a PowerPoint. Ethan had said no. Why not? The man had asked. That's what an audit is. Because the second a suit walks through that door, everybody in the building becomes an actor, Ethan said. You'll get a performance. I don't want a performance. I want a Tuesday. He hung the nozzle up, screwed the cap on, and got back in the truck. Dad, Lily said, you've got your face on. What face? The one where you're thinking about something you're not going to tell me. Ethan started the engine. Eat your apple. They got to Whitaker Street at 9:20. Ethan carried the folder under his arm. Lily carried her backpack with the library book she was on chapter 9 of. He held the door for a woman coming out, and she thanked him without looking up, and that was the last normal exchange of the day. Inside the lobby was doing its morning volume. 20-some people, a rope line, 4 teller windows, 3 desks along the back wall where the officers sat, and a security guard by the pillar, a big man 60-ish gray at the temples standing the way. Men stand when they've stood for a living their whole life. Ethan took a number from the machine. B42. He and Lily sat on the bench by the window. 6 minutes later, a man in a charcoal suit came through the door talking on his phone, and a young banker crossed the entire lobby to meet him. Handshake, laugh, hand on the shoulder. Mr. Holloway, I didn't know you were coming in. No, don't wait, come on back. The man in the charcoal suit had not taken a number. Ethan looked at the machine, then at the man's back disappearing down the hall. Then he took out a small notebook, the kind you buy at a hardware store, spiral 40 pages, and wrote one line. 926. No number taken. Lily leaned over. What's that? Notes. For what? For remembering. Why don't you just remember? Because Ethan said people are very good at telling you that you remembered it wrong. The young banker's name was Chase Winslow, and he was 28 years old, and he had, by his own frequent telling, the highest new account numbers of any officer in the region for 3 quarters running. He came back into the lobby at 9:41, glanced at the rope line, and called out, B39, 39. An old man stood up slowly from the second bench. He had a manila envelope in one hand and a cane in the other, and he had to plant the cane twice before he trusted his knee. Chase watched him cross the floor with an expression that Ethan would think about for a long time afterward. It wasn't cruelty. Cruelty would have been easier to write up. It was waiting. The way you wait at a red light. Morning, the old man said. I've been in twice about this. Okay, and what's this regarding? They're taking a payment out twice. Same payment, same day twice. Been doing it since March. Have you filed a dispute? I filed too. Okay, and did you get a case number? The old man opened the envelope with hands that had been broken more than once. Big hands. Concrete hands. He laid a paper on the counter. Chase glanced at it for maybe a second and a half. Yeah, so this one's closed. Closed? It says resolved. It ain't resolved. It's still happening. It happened last week. Sir, if the case is marked resolved, I can't reopen it from here. You'd have to call the 800 number. I called the 800 number. The 800 number told me to come here. Right, and I'm telling you, the case shows resolved in our system, so from our end, there's nothing to reopen. The old man stood there. Ethan watched his shoulders go down about half an inch. Not anger, something worse. The specific defeat of a man who has been through this loop enough times to recognize the shape of it. Son, he said, I poured half the sidewalk you walked in on. 38 years. I'm not trying to steal from you. I'm trying to tell you your machine is broke. Sir, I understand you're frustrated. Don't do that. But there's nothing further I can do today. 14 seconds of silence. Ethan counted them. Then the old man picked up his paper, folded it in thirds, put it back in the envelope, and walked out. Cane plant step. Cane plant step. All the way across that marble floor, and not one person in the building watched him do it except Ethan Carter and an 8-year-old girl who had stopped reading her book. Ethan wrote in the notebook, 944, B-39. Resolved. He said 38 years. His hand wasn't quite steady. He noticed that and made a note of it too in the private ledger he kept where nobody could read it. Dad, Lily said quietly. That man was sad. Yes, he was. Why didn't the guy help him? Ethan thought about how to answer that honestly to a child, which is the only way worth answering anything to a child. Because helping him would have been hard, he said, and nobody was going to make him do the hard thing. At 10:05, a woman came in with 2 kids, a boy about 4 and a girl still in a car seat carrier that she set on the floor by her feet because there was nowhere else to put it. She got to the window. Ethan couldn't hear all of it. He heard enough. The deposit posted Friday. I have the picture of the receipt right here. Ma'am, I'm showing a negative balance. I know it's negative, that's why I'm here. The overdraft fee is what made it. I can't reverse the fee. It's $36. I understand. It's $36 4 times. It's $144 because of one deposit that hadn't cleared yet on a Friday. Ma'am, I'd ask you to lower your voice. She hadn't raised it. Ethan was 30 feet away, and he could barely hear her. And that was the thing, she hadn't raised her voice 1 decibel, and the teller had said, lower your voice anyway, because it's the sentence you use to make a person into a problem. It worked. She lowered it. She lowered it, and her shoulders came in, and she said something Ethan couldn't hear at all. And then she picked up the carrier and took the 4-year-old's hand and left. The 4-year-old said loudly, Mommy, are we poor? And every single person in that lobby heard it, and every single person in that lobby looked away, and Ethan Carter felt something start to burn in his chest that had nothing to do with money. 10:11 he wrote. Told her to lower her voice. She hadn't. Lily was looking at him. Dad, your jaw's doing the thing. I know. Are you okay? No, Ethan said. But I'm going to be. B-42. Ethan stood up. That's me. He crossed the lobby with the folder under his arm and put it on the counter in front of Chase Winslow. Chase looked at him. It took about a second and a half. Same second and a half he'd given the old man's paper. The jacket. The boots. The truck keys on a ring with a bottle opener. The 8-year-old trailing behind with a library book. Ethan watched the assessment happen. He'd been watching it happen his whole life. He'd been watching it happen since he was 19, with a busted hand, and it never got faster or slower. It was always about a second and a half, and at the end of it, a door either opened or it didn't. It didn't. Okay, Chase said. What can I do for you? Not a question. There was no question mark anywhere in the sentence. I need to talk to someone about a business loan, Ethan said. Okay, you have an existing relationship with us. In a manner of speaking. Chase's mouth did something small. Meaning no. Meaning it's complicated. Sir, it's actually not complicated at all. It's a yes or a no. Do you have accounts with Sterling National? Yes, Ethan said. I do. Under what name? Carter, Chase typed. Ethan watched him type. 4 keystrokes and a click, which is not enough keystrokes to search anything, and Ethan knew it, and that told him more about branch 14 than any of the 4 months of data in the folder under his hand. I'm not seeing it. You didn't look. The air changed. It's a real thing that. Ethan had felt it in job sites and boardrooms and hospital hallways, the little pressure drop when somebody decides to stop being polite. Chase leaned back an inch and let his eyes go flat. Excuse me. I said you didn't look. You hit 4 keys. There's 100,000 Carters. Sir. I'm not being smart with you, son. I'm telling you what I saw. Okay. Chase pulled the folder toward himself with 2 fingers, the way you'd move something wet. What is this? That's what I came to discuss. He flipped it open. Ethan let him. That was deliberate. Ethan had thought about it in the truck. The top 40 pages were exactly what they looked like. A small business loan package. Real boring complete. Underneath that were the ratios. Underneath that were the complaint records. Chase read maybe 6 lines of page 1. Yeah, this isn't okay. First of all, this isn't the format. We don't take walk-in packages. There's a portal. I know about the portal. So use the portal. I want to talk to a human being. That's what the portal's for. The portal, Ethan said, is what I want to talk to a human being about. Somebody in the rope line laughed. Not at Ethan at the exchange, the little friction of it, the way people laugh at a bar fight starting. But Chase heard the laugh, and something in him lit up, because Chase Winslow was 28 years old, and there is nothing on earth more dangerous than a young man with an audience. He picked the folder up. Sir, I'm going to be straight with you, because I think it's kinder. Okay, look around. Look at where you are. He gestured at the marble, the brass, the mural. This is a commercial branch. Our average business client is doing 7 figures. I'm not saying that to be, I'm saying there are places that do what you're trying to do. There's community lenders. There's the credit union on 5th. They're good at this. This right here. He tapped the folder against his palm. This is a swing you're taking because somebody told you anybody can walk in anywhere, and somebody lied to you. Are you finished? I'm trying to save you a day, man. Are you finished? And Chase smiled. Ethan would remember the smile. You know what, he said, yeah, I'm finished. And he let the folder go, not through it, he'd say later, over and over in a deposition to a lawyer. To his mother, he let it go off the edge of the counter, and 3/4 of an inch of paper hit the marble and went everywhere, under the rope line, under the bench, under a woman's shoe. And he said it. You need a loan, not respect. The lobby laughed. Not everyone. Ethan would be precise about this for the rest of his life, because precision was the only thing that kept a man honest when he was angry. Not everyone laughed. Maybe 11 people laughed. 2 of them stopped almost immediately. One young woman at the 3rd teller window went absolutely white and put her hand over her mouth. But 11 people laughed, and the sound went up into that beautiful ceiling and came back down, and for about 4 seconds, Ethan Carter stood in the middle of 140 years of marble, while strangers enjoyed him. He didn't move. Inside his chest, the thing that had started burning at 10:11 went up like a pilot light hitting gas, and he stood there, and he let it burn, without touching a single thing, because he had learned at 31 years old, in a garage in the dark, 6 weeks after the funeral, with a wall in front of him, and his fist cocked back, and a 3-year-old asleep in the next room, that a man is not what he feels. A man is what he does in the 4 seconds after. He turned around. Lily was standing by the bench. She hadn't moved either. Her book was against her chest, and her eyes were enormous, and her chin was doing the thing it did, that tiny tremor, the exact one Sarah's used to do, and Ethan Carter crossed that lobby in 8 steps and went down on one knee in front of his daughter. Hey. Dad. Hey. Look at me. I'm okay. They laughed. I know. Why are you okay? And that right there was the hardest question Ethan Carter had been asked in 9 years, and it came from an 8-year-old in public on a Tuesday. Because they don't know me, he said. And you can't be hurt by a stranger's opinion of a man he's never met. That's not true. Ethan almost laughed. God, she was Sarah's kid. No, he admitted. It's not entirely true. It hurts. But I want you to watch what I do with it. Okay. Not what I feel. What I do. You watching. She nodded one hard nod. I'm sorry you had to hear that, he said. You shouldn't have had to hear that. That's on me, not on you, and not on him either. I brought you here, so that's mine. Then he stood up, and he turned around, and in front of a lobby that had gone very quiet, Ethan Carter got down on both knees on the marble floor of his own bank and picked up every single page. It took 90 seconds. Nobody helped him. That's not true. 2 people helped him. The security guard by the pillar came off the wall and crouched down and gathered up the pages that had gone under the rope line and handed them over without a word. Ethan looked at his name tag. R. Hollis. There was a small pin on his lapel, faded the kind they give you when you come home from a place that doesn't give you much else. "Thank you," Ethan said. "Yes, sir," Ray Hollis said. And then quieter, not moving his mouth much. "Page 11's under the bench." The other person was the young teller from the third window who had come out from behind the counter without permission and picked up 4 pages and put them in Ethan's hands with her whole face on fire. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, sir." "What's your name?" "Callie." "You don't have anything to be sorry for, Callie." "I do, though." Her voice cracked on it. "I've been here 8 months, and I do." She went back to her window. Ethan watched her go. He squared the pages on the counter. He tapped them once on the edge the way you do. And Chase Winslow, who had been standing there through all 90 seconds with his arms folded and his weight on one hip, said, "You done." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. "Almost," he said. And then he did the thing that nobody in the building expected, the thing that broke the whole day open. The thing Chase Winslow would try to explain to 17 different people and never once get right. He walked back to this bench, and he sat down. He didn't argue. He didn't demand a manager. He didn't say, "Do you know who I am?" Which was the sentence sitting in his mouth like a hot coin. The sentence he could have spent right there to buy every drop of that young man's blood. He sat down on the bench with his daughter, and he opened his hardware store notebook, and he clicked his pen. And he started writing. Chase watched him for a second. Then he laughed one syllable to the room, an invitation, and turned back to his screen. "Whatever, man." But he checked. Twice in the next 10 minutes, Ethan saw him check. Because there is a thing in the back of the human animal that knows when it has made a mistake long before the front of it does, and Chase Winslow's back brain was sitting up right now going, "Why isn't he leaving?" By the pillar, Ray Hollis had not gone back to the wall. He was standing at a slight angle now, and his eyes went from the young banker to the man on the bench to the folder and back. Ray had been watching men his whole life. It was the job. And what he was watching now was a man in a burned cuff jacket writing down times. Times, not complaints. Times. At 10:52, Chase called out B44. At 11:15, a woman with a walker was told the ADA entrance was around the side, which it was not. At 11:31, a man was asked for 2 forms of ID to cash a check drawn on the branch's own account. At 11:48, the branch manager, Diane Pruitt, came out of her office, took one look at the man in the canvas jacket, who had been sitting on her bench for 2 hours and 11 minutes writing in a notebook, and said the words that would end her 22-year career. "Is he going to be a problem?" And Ethan Carter clicked his pen, turned the page, and wrote 11:48. She asked if I was a problem. Diane Pruitt had said it to Chase, not to Ethan, but she'd said it at the volume people use when they want a thing overheard, and Ethan wrote it down without looking up. "Is he going to be a problem?" "He's been sitting there 2 hours, Chase said. "Doing what?" "Writing." "Writing what? How would I know he's writing?" Diane looked across her lobby at a man in a canvas jacket with a burn on the cuff and an 8-year-old girl reading a library book with her feet not touching the floor, and she made the calculation that every branch manager in America makes 40 times a day. "Did he ask for me?" "No." "Did he threaten anybody?" "No." "Then what's he doing?" "Diane, I'm telling you. He's writing." She stood there for 11 seconds. Ethan counted those 2. "Keep an eye on him," she said, and went back into her office, and the door didn't slam, which was almost worse. It clicked. Lily turned a page. "Dad?" She looked at us. She did. "Like we stole something." Ethan set his pen down. Say that again. Like we stole something, Lily said. Like we already did it, and she's just waiting to find out what. He looked at his daughter for a long moment. Write that down, he said, and handed her the pen. Me. You. Your words, your handwriting. Put the time on it. She looked at the wall clock, and her tongue came out the corner of her mouth the way it did when she was doing something important, and she wrote it, and Ethan Carter watched an 8-year-old make the first entry in what would eventually be Exhibit 14. At 12:04, a man came in with a folded flag in a triangle case under his arm. Not for the bank. He was carrying it because he'd come from somewhere and was going somewhere, and there was nowhere to leave it, and he set it on the counter with both hands, the way you set down something that isn't yours. Morning. I need to close my mother's account. Do you have a death certificate? The teller asked. I've got 4. I brought 4 because last time I came you said you needed the long form. Do you have letters testamentary? I've got that too. Okay, and are you on the account? No, ma'am. That's why I have the letters. There was typing. There is always typing. Ethan had come to understand over 4 months and 200 pages that typing is what a system does instead of listening. Okay, so it's showing a hold. A hold. There's a hold on the account. For what? It doesn't say. The man laughed. It was a bad laugh, the kind that comes out sideways. It doesn't say. I'm just seeing a flag, sir. My mother died in March. It's July. I have been in this building 6 times. He put his hand flat on the counter, not hard. 6 times. And every time somebody tells me a different piece of paper. And every time I bring that piece of paper, there's a new one. Is there a piece of paper that ends this? Because I'll go get it. I'll drive to Columbus right now. Just tell me which one, and I'll go get it, and we're done. Sir, I'd have to have a manager look at the flag. Then get a manager. She's with a client. She walked into her office 15 minutes ago and closed the door. I watched her do it. Sir, don't. Sir, I'd ask you to. If you tell me to lower my voice, the man said quietly. I'm going to sit down on that floor and I'm not getting up. The teller stopped. To her credit, she stopped. Ethan wrote that down too, because he had promised himself in the truck that he would write down the good with the bad, or the whole thing was just a man collecting reasons to be angry. But the flag stayed on the counter and the hold stayed on the account, and at 12:19, the man picked up his mother's flag and walked out with it under his arm, and Ray Hollis held the door for him, and neither of them said anything because there wasn't anything. Dad? Lily's voice was very small. How many is that? 4. 4 today, Will. 4 today. Is it always like this? And Ethan Carter, who owned the building, said the truest sentence of his life. I don't know, he said. That's the problem. I didn't know. At 12:40, Ray Hollis walked past the bench slow and dropped something. It wasn't dramatic. It was a pen. He dropped a pen and he crouched to get it, and while he was down there at the exact height of a man sitting on a bench, he said without looking up, You're not from here. No. Corporate. Ethan didn't answer. Ray picked up his pen. That's a yes. That's a pen on the floor. Uh-huh. Ray straightened up and adjusted his belt and looked out at the lobby the way he'd looked at it for 11 years. 12:40. She takes lunch at 1. Whatever you're writing, write faster. He walked on. Lily leaned over. Dad, did that man just help us? I think that man just risked his job, Ethan said, for a stranger. Put a star next to his name. At 12:55, Chase Winslow came out and stood in front of the bench. He'd worked himself up to it. Ethan could see the whole run-up in his face, the 2 hours of why isn't he leaving, the checking, the imagining the story he'd told himself about what kind of man sits still for 2 hours. So what's the play here? Ethan looked up. I'm sorry. The play. What is it? You want a settlement? You want a viral clip? Chase glanced at Lily, and something ugly came into his mouth. Is that why she's here? Ethan set the notebook down on the bench, deliberately, both hands free. Say the rest of it. I'm just saying, man, I've seen it. Guy brings a kid, guy makes a scene, guy waits around for somebody to say the wrong thing. It's a business model. You already said the wrong thing, Ethan said. 2 hours and 40 minutes ago. Nobody had to bring a kid for that. That's okay. Okay. Chase held his hands up. You know what, that came out worse than I meant. No, it didn't. Excuse me. It came out exactly how you meant it. You just didn't like how it sounded outside your head. Ethan picked the notebook back up. That's the whole thing, son. That's the entire thing. Everybody in this building is fine with what they think. It's the audio that bothers them. Chase stood there. And then because he was 28, and because a man who is losing an argument reaches for the biggest rock he can find, he said, "You want to know why I said it?" "Sure, because it's true." He leaned in a little. "You want respect, respect's not free, man. Nobody gets respect for showing up. My father showed up. He showed up for 31 years at a plant that closed on a Thursday with a fax. He showed up so hard he had a stroke in the parking lot at 54. You know what showing up got him? A folding chair at a job fair." Chase's voice had gone somewhere he hadn't planned. "So no, I don't hand out respect at the door. In here you earn it. You bring me numbers, I'll bring you a chair. That's the deal. That's the only honest deal in this building, and everybody's too soft to say it out loud." The lobby was quiet. Ethan Carter looked at this young man for a long, long moment. "What was his name?" he asked. Chase blinked. "What? Your father. What was his name?" "Why?" "Because you just told me the most honest thing anybody said to me all day," Ethan said. "And I want to know the name of the man it cost." Chase's mouth opened, closed. "Ronnie," he said. "Ronnie Winslow." "Yeah." Ethan nodded slowly. "Ronnie Winslow got treated like he was nothing," he said. "And you learned the lesson exactly backwards. Don't. You watched them do it to your dad, and you decided the mistake was being your dad. You don't know a damn thing about—" "You're right." Ethan's voice didn't rise a single inch. "I don't. But I know what a man looks like when he's spent 10 years trying to get to the other side of a door so it can never happen to him again. I've seen him in the mirror, son. The difference is, I didn't take the door with me." Chase Winslow stood in the middle of his own lobby, and for about 4 seconds was not a banker. Then he laughed that one syllable, the invitation, and walked away, and Ethan wrote 1258 and under it a single word. Grief. Because that was the thing nobody was going to want to hear at the end of this. That underneath a cruelty this efficient, there is almost never a monster. There's a scared kid with a dead father and a quota. At 1:10, Callie found him. She didn't mean to. She came out of the back hallway with a stack of forms, and she saw the bench and she stopped, like she'd hit glass, and Ethan looked up and she looked at the door, and then she did the bravest thing anybody did in that building all day. She walked over. "Sir, can I only have 4 minutes." "Sit down." "I can't sit down." Her hands were shaking on the forms. "If I sit down, she'll see." "Then stand there and hand me a form like I asked you a question." Callie's eyes went wide, and then she peeled a form off the stack and held it out, and Ethan took it and looked at it like it mattered, and the whole lobby saw a teller helping a customer. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you're writing times." "Yes." "Why?" "Because times can't be argued with." She made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost not. "You're the first person who's ever said that in this building and meant it." "Callie, 4 minutes." "Right," she swallowed. "There's a notebook." Ethan went very still. "In my car," she said. "There's a notebook in my car. I started it in November. It's names and times and what happened, and it's got, I don't know, 140 in it, maybe more. And I know that sounds insane. I know that's a crazy person thing to do. It's not. But I couldn't file them." "Why not?" And Callie Marsh, 23 years old, 8 months on the job, looked at the floor and said, The sentence that turned a customer service problem into a federal one. Because I did file them, she said, and they got resolved. Ethan's pen stopped. Say that again. I filed them. I filed 19 complaints between November and March. Every single one of them got marked resolved within 48 hours. Her voice cracked, and she put it back together in real time, and Ethan would remember that too. And I never resolved a single one. Who did? That's the thing. She looked up. My login did. The lobby noise went on around them. Somebody laughed at a teller window. A phone rang twice and stopped. Your credentials, Ethan said. My credentials, my employee ID, my name on the resolution field on 19 tickets I never touched. And I went to Diane, and Diane said the system does that. Sometimes it bundles, it auto-closes, and I said okay. And then I went home, and I couldn't sleep, so I started writing them down in a notebook in my car, like a lunatic. Callie. And then in April I stopped filing them at all because what's the point? And that's the part I can't. She stopped. Her chin went. That's the part I can't live with. Not them. Me. I stopped filing them. That old man with the cane. That's the 4th time he's been in. I know his name. His name is Walter Reese. I know his name and I stopped filing them. Ethan Carter sat on a bench in a lobby that belonged to him and felt the floor of the whole thing drop out. Because 41 complaints and corporate has 9 is a data problem. It's a bad afternoon and a memo. But 19 tickets resolved under a login that never touched them is not a data problem. That is a person. That is somebody's hands. Callie, he said, and his voice had changed and she heard it. Listen to me very carefully. Do not touch that notebook. Do not move it. Do not show it to anyone in this building. Not a manager, not a friend, not the guy you like in commercial, nobody. Are you sir? Who are you? Do you have somebody? Family. Somebody outside. I have my mom. Then tonight you drive to your mother's and you leave that notebook there. And you tell no one you spoke to me. You're scaring me. Good, Ethan said. Be scared for about 12 hours. Then don't ever be scared here again. Her 4 minutes were up. She'd been standing for 6. Sir? She was already turning. The last one. The 19th one. What about it? It didn't close in 48 hours, Callie said. It closed in 9 minutes. And she walked back to window 3. At 1:26, Ethan Carter did something he had not done since he'd walked through the front door. He took out his phone, not to make a call. He opened a message thread with a man named Dev Sharma, who was 34 years old and ran an analytics team of 6 out of an office with no window because he'd asked for no window, and he typed with his thumbs like a man twice his age. Pull every resolution timestamp branch November 14th to now. Sort by seconds elapsed from open to close. The reply came in 90 seconds. Boss, why? Just do it. 4 minutes. Lily read her book. A woman got her balance and left happy. The world kept turning. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. Ethan. There are 214 complaints, 214 that closed in under 15 minutes. Median close time on that pile is 6 minutes 40 seconds. Ethan, a human, cannot investigate a complaint in 6 minutes. Whose logins? 11 different logins. All tellers. All junior. From where? The dots appeared. They stayed a long time. Long enough that Ethan looked up and watched Diane Pruitt's door. One terminal Dev wrote. All 214. Same machine. Which machine? Branch 14, workstation 3. It's the manager's office. Ethan Carter sat very still on a wooden bench with an 8-year-old beside him and understood that he was not in a lobby anymore. He was standing on top of a hole. Dev, do not tell anyone. Not Marcus, not legal, nobody. Why not Marcus? He's the regional. This is literally his, especially not Marcus. There was a pause. Ethan. Do you know something I don't? I know something you don't. At 1:44, the man in the charcoal suit came back. Holloway. He came through the front doors with the phone still at his ear and he did not take a number, and Chase Winslow crossed the lobby again, and this time Ethan watched with a very different set of eyes. "No, I'm here now. I'm literally walking in. Tell him it's done Thursday." Holloway lowered the phone. Chase. "Mr. Holloway. Is she in?" "She's in. Alone." Chase's eyes flicked 1/2 second to the bench to the man in the canvas jacket, and then back. "Yeah," he said. "She's alone." And Holloway walked past 26 waiting people and knocked twice on Diane Pruitt's door and went in without waiting. Ethan wrote 144. Holloway. No number. Door closed. Then he wrote under it. Chase looked at me first. Because that was the tell. That was the whole tell. A man who is doing nothing wrong does not check the room. At 2:02 the door opened, and Holloway came out, and he was smiling, and Diane was smiling, and they shook hands, like people who have finished something, and Holloway walked out through the lobby and got into a black sedan that had been idling at the curb for 18 minutes in a loading zone with its flashers on. At 2:03, Diane Pruitt looked at the bench. The smile was still on her face for about a quarter of a second after her eyes landed, and Ethan watched it come off. Not fall off, come off deliberately, like a woman taking off an earring. She walked over. "Sir, can I help you with something? I'm waiting. For assistance." "You were assisted." She said it warmly. That was the frightening part. Diane Pruitt had 22 years, and she was very, very good, and there was not one thing in her voice you could have played back at a hearing. "Mr. Winslow tells me your loan package isn't something we handle at this branch. I'm sorry about that. There's a wonderful credit union on 5th. He didn't read it. And honestly, for a package your size, they're going to give you attention, we just can't. He read 6 lines and then he dropped it on the floor." "That's not what I was told." "I know," Ethan said. "That's why I wrote down the time." Diane Pruitt's face did not move, but something behind it did, a small door closing somewhere at the back of the building. "I'm sorry." 11:41, Ethan said. That's when it hit the floor. 11:42, 28 seconds. That's when he said, "You need a loan, not respect." 11:43 through 11:44 and a half. That's 90 seconds of me picking it up. 9:44, Walter Reese, 41 years old, case marked, resolved. He stood at that counter for 14 seconds while nobody said anything. 10:11, a woman with 2 children was told to lower her voice at a volume I could not hear from 30 feet. 12:19, a man carried his mother's flag out of here for the 6th time. Ethan looked up at her. 1:44, Mr. Holloway did not take a number. The silence went on long enough that a teller 2 windows down stopped typing. "Sir." Diane said, "Are you recording this?" "No. Because Ohio's a one-party state, so if you are..." "I'm not recording. I'm listening." Ethan closed the notebook. "That's what I told my daughter this morning when she asked what we were doing here. She said it sounded boring." Diane's eyes went to Lily, just for a moment, and Lily, 8 years old, feet not touching the floor, looked right back at her and did not blink, and something in Diane Pruitt's chest went cold, because in her 22 years she had learned to read a lobby, and a child does not look at you like that unless she has been told the truth about you. "I'm going to have to ask you to conclude your business," Diane said. "I haven't started it." "Sir, you want to know what my business is?" Ethan stood up. He didn't loom. He stood the way a man stands when he's about to leave a room, and Diane Pruitt actually stepped back half an inch and hated herself for it. "My business," he said, "is a man named Walter Reese, who poured your sidewalk, and who is going to get double debited again on the 1st of next month unless somebody in this building types 4 words into a box. 4 words. That's it. That's my whole business. That's not... Do you want to know why he can't get it fixed?" "Sir, that customer's account is private, and I'm not going to..." "Because his complaint closed in 6 minutes," Ethan said. Diane Pruitt stopped breathing. It was very small. If you weren't watching for it, you'd have missed it entirely. A half inhale that didn't go anywhere. And Ethan Carter had spent 30 years watching men and women across tables, and he saw it land like a rock in a pond. 6 minutes, he said again. Do you know how long it takes to investigate a double debit, Diane? I don't either, but I know a person can't do it in 6 minutes, and I know 214 of them closed in under 15. Who are you? There it was, second time in an hour. The question the whole day had been walking toward. And Ethan Carter, who could have ended it right there, who could have said 7 words and watched 22 years fall off a woman's face, did not say them, because he wasn't done listening. I'm a guy with a notebook, he said, and sat back down. At 2:15, Diane Pruitt went into her office and closed the door and did not come out for 11 minutes, and when she came out, her hand was shaking and her voice was perfect. Ray Hollis came off the pillar. Ma'am. The gentleman by the window. Yes, ma'am. He's been here 5 hours. 4 hours 52. Diane's head turned. Excuse me. He came in at 9:20, Ray said. It's 2:12. That's not what I asked you. No, ma'am, it isn't. At 2:30, she tried something else. She sent Chase. Sir, we're going to need the bench. For what? There's a group coming in. A group? A community group. Ethan looked around the empty half of the lobby. Where are they going to sit, Chase? That's not... You just made that up, right now, in front of me. Ethan wasn't angry. That was the thing that was breaking Chase Winslow apart hour by hour. The man was not angry. Son, in 6 hours, I have watched you lie about a portal, lie about a system, lie about a folder, and now lie about a group. Do you hear it? When it comes out, do you hear it at all anymore? Chase's jaw worked. I need you to leave, he said. No, you don't. You want me to leave. Those are different, and the difference is going to matter to you a lot more than it matters to me. Why are you doing this? And Ethan said, because nobody did it for Ronnie. Chase Winslow turned around and walked into the back hallway, and did not come out for 9 minutes, and when he did, his eyes were red, and he went to his desk and sat down and typed nothing. At 2:47, Ethan's phone buzzed. Dev. Ethan, I did what you said. I didn't tell anyone. Good. But you need to see this, and I don't want to send it. Send it. Ethan, Dev, send it. 30 seconds. Then a screenshot. It was an override authorization. It was 1 line long. It was the kind of thing that exists in a system by design for emergencies for the 11 times a year. A branch has to be unstuck at 2 in the morning, and every single use of it generates a permanent record with a name on it. The name on it was Marcus Vance. Ethan Carter looked at his phone for a very long time. Marcus Vance was 59 years old. Marcus Vance had a bad hip and a worse sense of humor and a photograph on his desk of a job site in 1996. And in that photograph in the back, out of focus, was a 19-year-old kid with a busted hand who had been turned down by every crew in 3 counties because he had no references and no diploma and an attitude, and Marcus Vance had looked at that kid for about a second and a half and said the sentence that made everything after it possible. I don't care where you've been. Can you carry that Marcus Vance had loaned him $400 in 1997 and never once mentioned it again? Marcus Vance had carried one end of Sarah's casket. Dad? Ethan didn't hear her. Dad. Lily put her hand on his arm. Dad, your face. He put the phone down in his lap screen against his leg. Dad, what happened? And Ethan Carter, who had not cried in a public building in 9 years, said, I found out something I already knew. What does that mean? It means his voice was doing something, and he took it back hard. It means when somebody's been running a bank for you for 11 years, and you never once drove down here on a Tuesday, that's not his sin. Some of that's yours. I don't understand. I know, sweetheart. Are you going to be okay? Ethan looked at his daughter. Not today, he said. At 3:01, Diane Pruitt came out of her office with her chin up and stopped in the middle of her lobby, and everyone in the building could feel it, the way you feel a storm change direction. She had made a phone call too. Ray? Ma'am? Remove him. The lobby went quiet. Every window, every desk. 20-some people who had been minding their own business turned around at once. Ray Hollis stood there. Ma'am, he hasn't done anything. He's loitering. He's a customer with a number. He is not a customer. He is a man on a bench, and I am telling you. He took B-42, Ray said. It's on the machine. You can print it. Diane Pruitt turned and looked at her security guard the way you look at a chair that just spoke. Ray, I am giving you a direct instruction. Yes, ma'am, you are. Then do it. And Ray Hollis, 61 years old, 11 years on that floor, a man with a faded pin on his lapel, and a daughter in nursing school and $840 in his checking account, said, No, ma'am. Somebody at window 3 made a small sound. You understand what you're doing. I've got a pretty good idea. You're done here. Yes, ma'am, Ray said. I expect I am. And Diane Pruitt turned to the young banker at the desk and said, Chase, call the police. And Chase Winslow, who had a dead father and a quota and 6 hours of a man not being angry at him, looked at the phone on his desk and did not move. Chase. He picked it up, and behind him on the bench, Ethan Carter stood and put his notebook in his jacket pocket and said, Ray, it's all right. Sir, it's all right. Let her make the call. He looked at Diane Pruitt across 40 feet of marble, and his voice was the quietest it had been all day. I want it on the record. I want the time on it. Then he took out his phone and he dialed one number and he said 6 words into it. It's me. Bring all of them. He put the phone back in his pocket and sat down again. That was what undid Diane Pruitt. Not the call. The sitting. Who did you just call? My people. Your people. Diane. Ethan said her name the way you'd say it to someone you'd known a long time, and she flinched at it. You've got about 9 minutes. I'd use them. Use them for what? For whatever it is you're going to say later. Get it straight now while it's quiet. At 3:04, Chase Winslow was still holding the phone against his ear with his finger on the hook. Chase? It's ringing, he said. It wasn't ringing. He hadn't dialed. Diane didn't know that, and Ethan did. And Ethan didn't say a word because a man gets exactly one chance to find out what he is, and you don't take it from him by narrating. Tell them we've got a male 50s refusing to leave on Diane. And he's been agitating customers. Diane, he hasn't agitated anybody. He's been sitting there. He is disturbing my... He picked up his own papers off the floor, Chase said, and his voice broke in the middle of it, and everybody heard. Nobody helped him. Not one person in this whole building helped him, and he said thank you to the guard. The lobby didn't move. Hang up the phone, Diane said. You told me to. Hang up the phone, Chase. He hung up the phone. He'd never dialed. He sat there with his hand on it and his eyes wet, and 26 people watching him, and he understood for the first time in his adult life that he had been standing on the wrong side of a door for 6 years and had thought it was a career. At 3:07, Ray Hollis took his radio off his belt and set it on the counter. Ma'am, I'm going to need to say something. Not now. It'll only take a second. He straightened up, and he did it the way men do who spent their 20s learning to do exactly that. In 11 years, I've walked 17 people out of this building. Every single one of them I could tell you what they did. This is the first time I couldn't finish the sentence. Ray, I swear to God, that's all. That's my whole statement. He picked the radio back up. I'm going to stand by the door now because that's my post and there's people trying to come in. At 3:09, Callie Marsh closed her drawer. Nobody had told her to. She just closed it and counted it and locked it and stood there behind window 3 with her hands flat on the counter, and if you'd asked her what she was doing, she couldn't have told you. At 3:11, the first car pulled up outside. Not a limousine. Ethan had never owned a limousine in his life. It was a gray Suburban with a rental sticker in the back window, and a man got out of the passenger side with a laptop bag and no jacket and his badge already out, and he did not look at the marble or the brass or the mural. He looked at the bench, and then he stopped walking right there on the sidewalk and put his hand over his mouth for a second, because Dev Sharma had been on the phone with his boss for 6 hours across 4 months, and he had never once in 3 years seen Ethan Carter sit anywhere for 5 minutes. The second car came in behind it, then a third, then 2 more. At 3:12, a woman at the second window said out loud to nobody, "Are those ours?" At 3:13, the front door opened, and Dev Sharma walked into branch 14 of Sterling National Bank, carrying a laptop bag, and behind him came 11 people, and then 9 more. And then a woman in her 60s with a legal pad and a face like a closed drawer. And the room did the thing rooms do when the temperature drops 30 degrees at once. Nobody announced anything. That was the worst part, Diane Pruitt would say later in a room with a court reporter in it. Nobody said a word. They just came in, and they kept coming in, and they went to the walls, and one of them went and stood in front of the server closet like it was a door on a plane. Dev crossed the lobby. He stopped in front of the bench. He looked at the canvas jacket, and the burn on the cuff, and the 8-year-old with a library book, and the hardware store notebook, and his voice came out about half the size he'd planned. "Boss, Dev, you've been here since 9:20. 9:20. Dev's throat moved. "Sir, if you'd told me we could have..." "You'd have called ahead," Ethan said. "And I'd have gotten a performance." "Yeah." Dev laughed wet. "Yeah, you would have. Did you bring it?" "I brought all of it. Everything." "Ethan," Dev said quietly, "I brought the terminal." At 3:14, Diane Pruitt walked into the middle of it with her hands out, because 22 years had taught her that whoever speaks first owns the room. Excuse me, can I ask what this is? Because I don't have any notice of is this an audit? Because there's a protocol, and I haven't received any." The woman with the legal pad turned around. "Diane Pruitt." "Yes." "Helen Okonjo, I'm outside counsel." Outside for who?" "For the audit committee of the board." Helen didn't blink. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from your office." "That's my office." "I understand that. I have client files in..." "Ma'am." Helen's pen didn't move. "That's exactly why I need you to step away from it." At 3:16, Diane Pruitt looked around her lobby for somebody to save her, and there was nobody, and she understood that in the last 12 minutes she had become a woman, standing in a building she no longer worked in. So she went to the last thing she had. She turned around, and she pointed at the bench, and she said at the top of her voice to 26 customers and 31 strangers in suits, "That man has been harassing my staff for 6 hours. Mud, and the whole room turned to look at the bench. And Ethan Carter stood up. He didn't hurry. He tucked the notebook in his pocket, and he took his daughter's hand, and he walked out into the middle of that floor, and he stopped about 8 feet from Diane Pruitt. And 31 people in that room came to attention like a rope going tight, and Diane Pruitt watched them do it, and the blood went out of her face in one long, slow pull. "No," she said. "No, no, no. Diane, you came in here in a..." "Ethan Carter." He put his hand out. "We've met. Twice. Regional conference in Columbus 2019 and once at the Christmas thing at the Hyatt. You told me a story about your mother's ring." Diane Pruitt did not take his hand. She couldn't. Her arm was not receiving mail. "You're not..." Her voice had gone up into a register that didn't belong to her. "You're a contractor. I've seen that you're in the annual report. You're page 4. Ethan agreed. "It's a bad picture. I hate that picture." Behind her, a young man at the first window said, "Oh my God," and sat down on the floor. Chase Winslow had not moved. Chase Winslow was standing at his desk with both hands flat on it, and his mouth was open, and he was doing the math, and the math was going through him like a nail. 11:41, 11:42, 28 seconds. "Mr. Carter?" Diane started. "Not yet." "I want to explain." "Diane, not yet." He wasn't cold. That was what she'd never get over. There was no ice in it at all. "You're going to want to explain for about 3 days. I'm going to let you." Not out here. He turned. Chase. Chase Winslow's head came up like a man at his own sentencing. Come here. The lobby of Branch 14 watched a 28-year-old walk 20 feet across a marble floor, and it took him roughly a year. He stopped. He couldn't get his eyes up past the burn mark on the cuff. Sir, What time is it? Chase blinked. What? You heard me. What time is it? It's 3:18. Good. Now say it. Say what? What you said at 11:42. Ethan's voice stayed exactly where it had been all day. Say it again. Same volume. There's more people now, so you'll have to project. The silence in that building had weight. It sat down on people's chests. Sir, please. Say it. I can't. Why not? And Chase Winslow, in front of 31 lawyers and auditors and 26 customers, and a girl with a library book said, Because it's the worst thing I've ever done. Ethan let that sit for 4 seconds. Then he said, louder. Because it's the worst thing I've ever done. It came out of him like something breaking. Because I said it to make people laugh. Because 11 people laughed and I liked it. Because I've said it before, not those words, but I've said it before. I say it every day. I say it with my face. I've been saying it since I got here, and I have been good at it, and they gave me a plaque. Chase. And I dropped his papers on the floor in front of his kid. Chase. He stopped. Breathe. He breathed. It shuddered. Ethan Carter looked at him for a long moment. You asked me why I was doing this, he said. You want the real answer? Chase nodded. Because I'm the reason you exist, Ethan said. The room did not understand. Chase didn't either. But Helen Okonjo's pen stopped moving because Helen Okonjo had read the file. Sit down, all of you. Ethan raised his voice for the first time in 6 hours, and it turned out he had one, and it went to the back wall and stuck there. Anybody who wants to leave, leave. Your customers, you don't work for me. Everybody who works for me, sit down. Ray, get the door. Yes, sir. Ray. Sir. You're not fired. Ray Hollis stood there with his hand on the door, and his eyes went somewhere for a second. No, sir, he said. I didn't figure I was. At 3:22, Ethan Carter stood in the middle of a bank he owned and talked to 40 people, sitting on the floor and on desks and against the walls. 9 years ago, he said, I told a room like this one that we were going to grow. And we grew. And I gave you numbers. Because numbers are easy to give. Numbers are the laziest thing a man in my position can hand you. And I handed you numbers for 9 years, and then I went home. Nobody moved. I never told you what to do when a man with a cane puts a paper on your counter, and the paper says resolved, and you know in your gut it isn't. I never said one word about that. Not one. In 9 years. He looked around the room. So when your manager says the culture came from the branch, she's not lying. It came from the branch. And the branch got it from the region. And the region got it from a man in a truck who was very proud of himself for never buying a new one. Chase Winslow put his face in his hands. That's what I mean, Ethan said. I'm the reason you exist. You didn't invent that sentence, son. You inherited it. And I'm the estate. At 3:26, Helen Okonjo said, Mr. Carter, a word. Say it here. Sir, I'd strongly advise... Helen, if we start having the real conversation in a back room today, then nothing changes, and we all did this for a video. He didn't blink. Say it here. Helen Okonjo looked at her legal pad for 2 full seconds. 214 complaints resolved from one terminal, she said. Workstation 3. Under 11 junior logins that never touched them. Somebody said what? Of those 214, Helen said 191 relate to fee reversals, double debits, and overdraft sequencing. 23 relate to loan denials. She turned a page. And every single one of the 23 was filed by an applicant whose file was later reapproved through a commercial pipeline at a different rate. The room made a sound. Say that in English, Ethan said. In English. Helen looked up. Somebody was denying people at the counter closing their complaint before it could go anywhere, and then selling their file to somebody who'd lend to them at 4 points higher. Chase Winslow's head came up out of his hands. "Holloway," he said. Everybody turned. "Say that again," Ethan said. "Holloway." Chase was pale. "Robert Holloway. He's a client. He's in here twice a week. He's got a mortgage shop over on Grand, and he—" Chase stopped, and something moved across his face, and it was the specific horror of a man watching 6 years of his life reorganize itself in real time. "He buys leads." "From who?" From Chase's mouth. "He said it was a referral program." "Chase. From who?" "From us," Chase said. "Oh my God, from us. He calls it a referral program. Diane's got there's a sheet, every Thursday he comes in, and she gives him a sheet." At 3:29, Diane Pruitt bolted for her office. She got 4 steps. Ray Hollis had not moved from the door, but a man in a gray suit had been standing in front of the server closet for 16 minutes, doing absolutely nothing, and it turned out that was not an accident. "Ma'am, get out of my—" "Ma'am, I'd stop. Those are my files." "Diane." Ethan's voice cut across the whole lobby. "There's nothing in there." She turned around. "Dev pulled workstation 3 at 3:13, Ethan said. "It's in a car. It's been in a car for 16 minutes. Whatever you were going to do in there, you were going to do it to an empty desk." Diane Pruitt stood in the middle of her lobby with 40 people watching, and something in her collapsed inward, and out of the wreckage came the only thing she had left. "It was $70 a file," she said. "The whole room heard it." "Diane," Helen said sharply, "you should have counsel." $70 a file. She was laughing. It was a terrible sound. "You want to know what I did it for $70 a file? Do you know what this branch cleared last year? 11 million. And I made 94,000, and my bonus was tied to a satisfaction score. And the satisfaction score was built out of complaints, and every complaint that stayed open cost me—" She stopped. She had to. "You built it," she said, and she was looking at Ethan. "You built a machine that paid me to make them disappear, and then you drove here in a truck so you could be sad about it." The silence went on a long time. "Yes?" Ethan said. Diane blinked. "Say that again?" "I said yes." He didn't move. "You're right. Not about the $70. You could have quit. 14 people at this branch could have quit, and one of them did something better than quitting, and she's standing at window 3, and her name is Callie Marsh, and she's been writing it all down in her car since November because nobody in this company gave her anywhere else to put it." Every head in the building turned to window 3. Callie Marsh went the color of paper. "So no, Diane, you don't get the machine defense," Ethan said. "Because Callie had the same machine. Ray had the same machine. Ray had $800 in his checking account and the same machine, and 40 minutes ago, he told you no." Ray Hollis by the door looked at the floor. "But you're right about the rest," Ethan said. "And I'm going to say it out loud once in this room with a lawyer standing there telling me not to, because if I don't say it here, I'll never say it. I built the scoreboard. I never once asked what people were doing to make the score." Helen Okonjo closed her eyes. At 3:34, Ethan turned to Dev. "The override." Dev didn't move. "Dev." "Boss." "The override on the complaint bundling. The one that let a manager's terminal close tickets under other people's logins." Ethan's voice was very level, and everybody in the room could hear what it was costing. "It's not a bug. It's a feature somebody turned on. Who turned it on?" Dev looked at him. "You already know." "I want it said out loud." "Ethan, say it." And Dev Sharma said, "Marcus Vance." The room didn't react because the room didn't know. 40 people in that lobby heard a name and heard nothing. Ethan Carter heard the last 29 years. "When?" he said. "April 2 years ago." "Why?" "It's in the ticket." Dev's voice had gone soft. "He wrote a justification. It's 4 lines. Read it." Ethan, read it, Dev. Dev opened the laptop on somebody's desk and found it and read it. Complaint volume at branch level creating unmanageable queue depth for junior staff. Requesting temporary bundling authority at manager terminal to reduce backlog. 6-month sunset. Dev stopped. Keep going. That's the 4 lines. There's a 5th. Dev's jaw moved. There's a 5th line, Dev. Approved, Dev said. Sunset waived pending review. By who? Silence. By who, Dev? By the board, Dev said. Ethan, the sunset waiver went to the board. It was in a consent agenda. It was item 19. He looked up. You voted for it. At 3:37 in the afternoon, Ethan Carter stood in the middle of his own bank and found out that he had signed it. Not with a pen. With a hand raised in a room on a Thursday in a stack of 40 items between a lease renewal and a change to the dental plan. 9 seconds of his life. He had probably been thinking about lunch. 214 of his life. He had probably been thinking about lunch. 214 complaints. Walter Reese's cane. A folded flag going out a door 6 times. Mommy, are we poor? Item 19. Dad. He didn't hear her. Dad. Lily was pulling on his hand with both of hers. Ethan Carter looked down at his daughter, and 40 people watched a man who owned $11 billion of other people's money get held up by an 8-year-old. You said, Lily said, that a man isn't what he feels. The lobby was so quiet, you could hear the HVAC. You said it in the garage, she said. You said you don't remember, but I do. You said a man is what he does after. Ethan Carter's mouth moved, and nothing came out. So what are you going to do after? Lily said. At 3:39, Ethan Carter got down on one knee in front of his daughter for the second time that day, in front of everybody, and said, watch. Then he stood up. Helen? Sir? Nobody's fired today. The room made a noise. Nobody's fired today, Ethan repeated. Because if I fire 11 people this afternoon, then in 6 weeks there's 11 new people standing in the exact same spots doing the exact same thing. And every one of you gets to go home tonight thinking the problem left in a car. It didn't. It's item 19. It's a consent agenda. It's me. He turned. Diane Pruitt is suspended. Paid. Effective now. Paid, somebody said. Paid, because if I make her broke today, she lawyers up tomorrow, and I never find out who else took $70 a file, and I would rather know than feel good. He looked at Diane. You'll be interviewed under counsel. If you tell Helen everything, Diane, including Thursdays, that's the last kindness I've got for you, and it's not for you. It's for Walter Reese. Diane Pruitt made a sound and put her hand over her mouth. Halloway. Helen looked up. Sir. His files. All of them. Every loan he's written off a sterling lead in 4 years. That's a subpoena conversation. Then have it. Sir, if we hand that to a regulator before we've Helen. Ethan looked at her. I want you to hear the actual instruction, because I'm only going to say it once, and you're going to want it in your notes. I'm not asking you to manage this. I'm telling you to hand them everything before they ask, including the part that ends with my name on item 19. Helen Okonjo put her pen down. Mr. Carter, she said, I have to advise you on the record in front of these witnesses that is the worst legal decision I've seen a principal make in 19 years. Noted. You will pay a fine. You will personally be deposed. There is a real chance you lose your seat over this. Helen. Sir, do you know what Walter Reese lost? Ethan said. He lost $32 a month for 4 months, and every single time he came in here to fix it, he had to be a beggar in a building. His hands built. That's $128, and $128 cost that man his dignity 4 separate times, and I'm not going to sit here and negotiate about my seat. Helen Okonjo looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her pen. I'll need the branch's Thursday calendar going back 4 years, she said. At 3:44, Ethan turned to window 3. Callie. She had been crying for 6 minutes and had not made a single sound, which is a thing you learn how to do at some point in your 20s and never unlearn. Sir? Where's the notebook? My car. Go get it. Sir, her voice went. I'm going to lose my job. The whole lobby heard it. Say that again, Ethan said. I said I'm going to lose my job. She was shaking. I know what this looks like. I know what I did. I stopped filing them. In April I stopped. So whatever happens to them should happen to me too, and I'm not. I'm not going to stand here and be the good one because I'm not the good one. I just wrote it down. The room was absolutely still. Ethan Carter walked across that floor to window 3 and put both hands on the counter and said quietly enough that only she and the 4 people closest could hear. Callie, how many did you write down after you stopped filing? All of them. How many is all of them? 141. For how long? 8 months. Getting paid for it? No. Anybody ask you to? No. Anybody know? No. Ethan Carter looked at a 23-year-old with a notebook in her car. That's not the good one, he agreed. That's the only one. And then he turned around and said to the entire room in a voice that came out flat and hard and carried to the back. Everybody in this building had 214 chances to be Callie Marsh. One of you took it. At 3:47, the front door opened. Ray Hollis had his hand on it. He'd been holding it for people all day, and he held it now, and he said, Sir, there's a gentleman. Ethan turned. Marcus Vance stood in the doorway with his bad hip and his cane, and he looked at the 31 people in suits, and the girl at window 3, and the man in the canvas jacket with the burn on the cuff standing in the middle of the floor. And Marcus Vance said, Ethan. And Ethan Carter said, I don't care where you've been. Marcus's face came apart. Can you carry that? Ethan said. Marcus Vance stood in that doorway for 11 seconds and did not answer. 40 people watched him not answer. Ethan, he said finally. Can we do this somewhere? No. Son, don't. Ethan's voice didn't rise. You don't get that word today. Not today. Marcus's hand tightened on the cane. He looked at Helen Okonjo and her legal pad, and at Dev Sharma with a laptop open on somebody's desk, and at 31 people in suits standing along the walls of a bank lobby like a jury that had gotten tired of the box. You brought lawyers, he said. I brought witnesses. That's the same thing. No, it isn't, Ethan said. A lawyer's for me. A witness is for them. At 3:49, Marcus Vance walked into the lobby of Branch 14, and it took him a long time because his hip was bad, and it had been bad since 1996, and everybody in that room got to watch every step. He stopped in front of Ethan. Ask me, he said. April 2 years ago. Ask me the question, Ethan. Don't give me a date and let me hang myself on it. I've watched you do that to men for 20 years. Ask me. Ethan looked at him. Did you turn on the bundling override? Yes. The room made a sound. Did you know what it would do? Yes. Dev Sharma stood up out of his chair. Did you know somebody was selling files to Holloway? And Marcus Vance said no. Marcus, no. It came out of him like a hammer, and half the lobby jumped, and Marcus Vance, 59 years old, took a breath and got it back. No. And I'm going to say that under oath, and I'm going to say it to a grand jury if it comes to that, and I'll say it to you right here, and Ethan, you've known me since you were 19 years old, so you know what my no sounds like. I used to. Marcus flinched. It was the first time all day anything hit him. Fair, he said quietly. That's fair. At 3:51, Helen Okonjo said, Mr. Vance, I need to advise you. Ma'am, I'm going to talk. Sir. I've been sitting in a car outside for 40 minutes, trying to decide if I was going to walk in here, and I decided so I'd appreciate it if you'd let me get it out before I lose the nerve. He didn't look away from Ethan. You want to know why I turned it on? Yes. Because of you. Say something else. I'm not going to say something else because that's the answer. Marcus's voice went rough. April 2 years ago. You remember what happened in April 2 years ago? No. Of course you don't. Marcus laughed, and it was ugly, and it was mostly at himself. You stood up in Columbus in front of 200 branch managers, and you put a slide up. One slide. It said, "First call resolution." And you said, "I've got it word for word, Ethan. I've had it in my head for 2 years." You said, "I don't ever want to hear that a customer had to come back twice." Ethan Carter did not move. "That's a beautiful sentence," Marcus said. "That's a hell of a sentence. That's exactly the kind of thing a man says when he owns the building and he's never stood behind the counter." He shifted his weight off the bad hip. "You know what a branch manager hears? A branch manager hears open complaints are now a fireable offense. That's what they heard. Every one of them. 200 people drove home from Columbus that night and did the math in the car." "That's not what I said." "That's not what you said, no." Marcus nodded. "It's what you paid for." At 3:53, Diane Pruitt, standing 40 feet away with a lawyer's hand near her elbow, said out loud to nobody, "Oh my God, he's right." "Ma'am, don't. He's right." She was crying now, and she didn't seem to know it. "Do you know what my Q3 review said? Do you want to know what it said? Q depth trending unfavorable. Not people, not customers. Q depth. And I sat in that meeting and I nodded like an idiot, and I drove home and I opened a bottle of wine and I thought, okay. They're not going to tell me how. They're just going to tell me the number." "Diane," Helen said, "I am begging you to stop talking." And then they never asked. Diane's voice broke all the way open. That's the part nobody's going to believe. In 2 years, not one person from corporate ever asked me how I got Q depth down. Not one. They sent me a plaque. Chase Winslow said, "It's in the break room." Everybody turned. "The plaque," he said. "It's on the wall in the break room. It says Fastest Resolution Team Region 4. It's you walk past it going to the microwave." At 3:55, Ethan Carter said, "Ray." "Sir?" "Go get it." "Sir." "The plaque. Go get it and bring it out here." Ray Hollis looked at him for a second, and then he went, and the entire lobby of Branch 14 sat in silence for 90 seconds, while a 61-year-old man with a bad knee walked to a break room and took an award off a wall. He came back and held it out. Ethan didn't take it. "Read it." "Sir, I'm not Ray, please." And Ray Hollis, who had been holding doors in that building for 11 years, read out loud, "Fastest Resolution Team Region 4, presented to Branch 14, signed." He stopped. "Keep going." "Sir?" "Whose signature's on it, Ray?" "Yours," Ray said. At 3:57 in the afternoon, Ethan Carter took his own signature off a wall and held it in both hands and looked at it, and nobody in that building breathed. 214 complaints, he said. Median close 6 minutes 40, and I gave them a trophy for the speed. He set it face down on the counter. "Dev." "Boss?" "How many branches have that plaque?" Dev's hands went still on the keyboard. "Dev." "Ethan, don't." "How many?" 9, Dev said. The lobby didn't understand. Helen Okonjo did. Helen Okonjo said very quietly, "Oh no." 9 branches got the award, Dev said. "The award goes to the top decile of resolution speed." So, he stopped and made himself start again, because he was 34, and he had never in his life had to say a sentence like this to a man he loved. "So the 9 fastest branches in the company are the 9 branches we should be looking at first, and I already ran it. On the way here, in the car. You ran it in the car. I ran it in the car. And..." Dev looked at his screen. "It's not 214, he said. It's 4,106. Somebody in the back of the lobby said, "Jesus." At 3:59, Ethan Carter put his hand flat on the counter and leaned on it. Just for a second. Just his weight for 1 second, and Lily saw it and moved, and he straightened up before she got there and put his hand on her head. "I'm all right. You're not. No, he agreed. But I'm standing. Marcus Vance was watching them. That's her, he said. Ethan didn't answer. That's Sarah's girl. Marcus. I carried her mother, Marcus said. I want it in the room. I want it said in the room because everybody here's about to decide I'm a villain, and I'd rather they knew what they were deciding about. He looked around the lobby at all of them. I carried that man's wife to her grave. I carried one end. And 2 years ago, I turned on a switch that ate 4,000 complaints so I could keep 200 managers from getting fired for a number he made up in a slide deck. His voice went. And I want you all to understand something because none of you are going to understand it, and I need to say it anyway. I didn't do it to hurt anybody. I did it to protect them. From who? Ethan said. From you. At 4:01, the lobby was so quiet you could hear the clock on the wall. Say that again, Ethan said. You want me to say it again? Yes. I turned it on to protect 200 managers from you, Marcus Vance said. Because you were up on that stage with your beautiful sentence, and you had no earthly idea what you'd just done. And I sat in the third row, and I watched 200 people go white, and I knew, Ethan, that in 6 months you were going to look at a spreadsheet, and you were going to see Q depth, and you were going to fire people. Not out of cruelty, out of distance. Because you were going to be 400 miles away looking at a number. So you lied to me. I gave you the number you wanted, Marcus roared, and the whole room jumped, and his cane came off the floor and hit it again. That's what everybody in this company has been doing for 9 years. You want to know the culture, Ethan? You want to know what the actual culture is. It's not that they hate poor people. It's that they're all terrified all the way up, and every single person in this building has one job, and the job is give the man the number. That's it. That's the whole job. And you never once, not once, got in that stupid truck and drove down here on a Tuesday to find out what the number cost. Ethan Carter stood there. I did today, he said. Yeah, Marcus's voice cracked. 9 years late, and it took a kid getting laughed at. That's right. Ethan. You're right, Marcus. Ethan didn't move. You're right, and I'm still going to hand you to Helen, and Helen's going to hand you to a regulator, and you're going to lose everything you built in a company I only have because you loaned me $400 when I was 19. Both of those are true at the same time. That's the part nobody teaches you. Both of them are just true. At 4:04, Marcus Vance said, I know. Do you? I've known since 3 o'clock. I've known since Dev called me. He looked up. You told him not to tell me. He didn't. I found out because I still have the alerts on my phone, Ethan. I've had them for 11 years. Somebody pulled workstation 3 and my phone buzzed and I sat in a parking garage for 40 minutes. And you came in? I came in. Why? And Marcus Vance said, because you'd have come in for me. Ethan Carter's jaw moved. Helen, he said. Sir, Marcus Vance is suspended without pay effective now, and he sits with you tomorrow at 8, and he tells you everything, and he doesn't get a lawyer paid by us, and if you find $1 of Holloway's money in his accounts, you call the U.S. attorney before you call me. Understood. Marcus. Yeah. You said no. I said no. Then I'm going to hope you're not lying to me, Ethan said, for the first time in 2 years. At 4:07, the front door opened. Nobody had been watching it. Every person in that building had their eyes on 2 men standing 8 feet apart in the middle of a marble floor, and the door opened and a voice said, Am I interrupting? Robert Holloway was standing in the doorway with his phone in his hand. He'd left at 2:02. He'd been gone 2 hours. And he had come back because he had left something. And because Robert Holloway had walked into that branch twice a week for 4 years and had never once in his life considered the possibility that a room could be against him. He got 3 steps in before he understood. Ethan watched it happen. It was the second and a half thing in reverse. Holloway's eyes went around that lobby, the suits on the walls, the woman with the legal pad, the laptop, Diane Pruitt with her mascara down her face, the man in the canvas jacket standing in the exact center of the floor, with everybody's attention pointed at him like a compass, and Robert Holloway did the math faster than anybody else in the room had. He turned around. "Mr. Holloway." He kept walking. "Robert." Ray Hollis was standing at the door. Ray Hollis had been standing at that door for 11 years, and he had opened it for Robert Holloway 400 times, and he did not open it now. He just stood there. 61 years old, hands at his sides, $800 in his checking account. "Move," Holloway said. "No, sir." "Get out of my way." "Sir, I'd sit down." "Do you know who I am?" And Ray Hollis said, "Yes, sir. You're the man who never takes a number." At 4:09, Robert Holloway turned around and made the only move he had, which was the move men like him always make, which is to become extremely reasonable. "Okay?" Hands up. Smile on. "Okay. Somebody want to tell me what's happening?" "Because I'm a client. I've got accounts here. I've got Diane." "What is this?" "Diane?" Pruitt looked at him. And in 22 years Diane Pruitt had learned exactly one thing all the way down, and it was this: when it lands on whoever's standing closest. $70 a file, she said. "Diane, $70 a file, Robert." "Diane, don't say another." Every Thursday. She was walking toward him now, and her lawyer had given up. "Every Thursday for 2 years and 8 months, and you'd come in here with that phone and that smile, and you'd say, 'Anything for me,' like I was a bartender. That is not what. And I'd hand you the sheet, and you'd go call those people at 9 points, Robert? They'd have gotten 5 right here at this counter if I'd have just... Shut up." The whole lobby heard it. Robert Holloway heard it too. He heard himself say it at full volume in a bank in front of 31 lawyers, and Ethan Carter watched a man's face do something he had only seen a few times in his life. Helen Okonjo wrote for 11 straight seconds. At 4:12, Holloway said very quietly, "I want my attorney." "You should get one," Ethan said. "And who are you?" "Ethan Carter." Holloway laughed. "Sure. He's the majority owner of Sterling Financial Group," Helen Okonjo said without looking up, still writing. "Mr. Holloway, I'd stop talking. That's not adversarial advice. That's a professional courtesy, and it's the last one you're getting from anybody in this room." Robert Holloway stood in a lobby he'd walked into twice a week for 4 years and looked at a man in a canvas jacket with a burn on the cuff. "You're the..." He stopped, started over. "I've been in here 11 times this year. You've been sitting on that bench since when? 9:20. And you let me walk past you." "Twice," Ethan said. "Why?" "Because you don't take a number," Ethan said. "And I wanted to see how many people it cost." At 4:14, Ethan Carter turned to the 26 customers who had been sitting in that lobby for the whole thing. "Folks, I'm sorry." Nobody knew what to do with that. "You came in here to do your banking," he said, "and instead you've been sitting in a room watching a company find out about itself. That's not what you paid for. So here's what's happening. Everybody in this lobby right now, everybody gets seen today. Today. Not the portal. Not the 800 number. Today by a human being. And I don't care if it takes till midnight." Somebody said, "Sir, I just needed a cashier's check." "Then you're going to get the fastest cashier's check in the history of Ohio," Ethan said. "And if it takes more than 4 minutes, I want to know why." At 4:16 he said, "Callie." "Sir." "Come out from behind there." She came out. "I need you to do something, and you're going to hate me for it." "Okay." "Say the names." Callie Marsh went white. "You don't have the notebook," Ethan said. "It's in your car, and I told you not to touch it. So say the ones you remember, out loud, in this room, in front of the people who let it happen." "Sir, I don't..." Her voice went. "There's 141. "Then say the ones that kept you up." The lobby of Branch 14 was silent, and a 23-year-old teller who had been on the job 8 months stood in the middle of a marble floor and said, "Walter Reese." She swallowed. "Double debit since March. 4 visits. His wife's on oxygen, and the copay comes out the same day. She stopped. Keep going, Ethan said. Denise Alvarado. Overdraft cascade $144 off one deposit that hadn't cleared. She was in this morning. She had a baby in a carrier. She had a... Callie's face came apart. Her son asked her if they were poor. He said it right there. I heard him. And I gave the next number. Ethan didn't say anything. Anthony Boyd. Callie's voice was shaking so hard now it barely worked. His mother died in March. 6 visits. He carries her flag because he's got nowhere to put it down. And there's a hold on the account, and the hold's been on there since May, and I looked it up in April because I wanted to know... She stopped. What was the hold? There wasn't one. The room made a noise. There wasn't one, Callie said. It was a flag. It was a flag. It was a soft flag from a fraud sweep in 2019 that nobody ever cleared, and it takes one person with a manager code and 9 seconds to take it off, and he's been in here 6 times, and every single time, somebody looked at a screen and said, "It doesn't say." Chase Winslow made a sound like he'd been hit, because Chase Winslow had said it. Keep going, Ethan said. Rosa Kim, Elaine Whitford, Terrence Poole. Terrence Poole came in 11 times. Callie was just going now, and it was pouring out, and nobody stopped her. 11. He's got a lawn business, 6 trucks. He was trying to get a $40,000 equipment loan, and he got told the portal and the portal and the portal, and then in February he stopped coming, and I looked him up in March and he'd gone somewhere else. She looked up. He'd gone to Halloway. Robert Halloway said, "That's a referral." 9 points, Callie said. That is a legitimate 9 points. She screamed at him, and the whole room went rigid because a 23-year-old who had been silent for 8 months had just found her voice, and it turned out to be enormous. He'd have gotten 5. He was standing right here. He was standing at my window, and I could see his numbers on my screen, and his numbers were fine. And I couldn't. She stopped. She put her hand over her mouth. I couldn't do anything, she said. I'm a teller. I can't approve anything. I can't reverse anything. I can't clear a flag. All I could do was write it down. At 4:21, Ethan Carter said, "That's not true." Callie looked up. "You could have done one more thing," he said. "You could have quit. You could have gone home in November and taken a job at the grocery store and slept fine for the rest of your life. Nobody would have blamed you. Nobody would have ever known. I know, everybody needed the job. Diane needed the job, Chase needed the job, Ray needed the job, and Ray's got $800 in the bank and a kid in nursing school, and he told a manager no at 3 o'clock this afternoon anyway." Ethan looked around that lobby slowly at every single face. "So let's stop with, I needed the job. That's not a defense. That's just a thing that's true about everybody in here." Silence. "You stayed," he said to Callie, "and you wrote it down, and it cost you 8 months of sleep. And today, it's the only reason any of these names get fixed. So don't tell me you couldn't do anything. You did the only thing in this building that worked." At 4:23, Chase Winslow stood up. "Sir?" Everybody turned. "I want to say something, and then I want to resign." "No," Ethan said. "Sir." "No. Sit down." "You don't understand." "I understand exactly," Ethan said. "You want to quit because quitting is fast. Quitting takes 9 seconds, and then you get to be sad about it for the rest of your life and never once have to sit across a counter from Walter Reese." He walked over. "That's not a punishment, son. That's an exit." Chase's mouth was open. "You want to make it right?" "Yes." "You sure?" "Yes, sir." "Then you're going to call Denise Alvarado," Ethan said. "Tonight. You're going to get her number out of the system, and you're going to call her at her house, and you're going to say your name, and you're going to say what you did, and you're going to reverse $144. And Chase..." He stopped him. "She's going to be furious. She's going to say things to you that you're going to remember when you're 60. and you're going to stand there and take it and say thank you, and then you're going to hang up and call the next one. How many? 214 at this branch. Chase Winslow stood there. Okay, he said. Say it again. Okay. Then that's the job, Ethan said. That's the whole job now. And if you ever want to know what your father was worth, you'll find out on about the 90th call. At 4:26, Chase Winslow sat down at his desk and picked up the phone and started typing a name into a system, and he was crying, and he didn't stop typing. At 4:27, Ethan Carter turned to Marcus Vance one last time. You said you did it to protect them. I did. From a man 400 miles away looking at a number. Yes, Marcus. Ethan's voice went somewhere it hadn't gone all day. Walter Reese is 76 years old, and his wife is on oxygen, and he lost $32 a month for 4 months. You know what he did with that 400 minutes he spent in this lobby? Nothing. He got nothing. 4 visits, 4 defeats, and he was polite every single time. He looked at his oldest friend. So which one of them did you protect? Marcus Vance had no answer. That's the thing about protecting people from a number, Ethan said. You always end up protecting the wrong people, every time. Because the number's up here, and the people are down there, and if you stand between them, the only thing you're actually shielding is the man at the top from finding out. Marcus Vance sat down on the bench where a man in a canvas jacket had sat for 6 hours and put his face in his hands. At 4:31, Helen Okonjo said, Mr. Carter, it's 4:30. I need decisions. Go. Diane Pruitt. Suspended paid full cooperation, and Helen, she talks first, she gets the benefit of that. Write it down. Marcus Vance. Suspended unpaid no company counsel. Robert Halloway. Every account frozen tonight, and every file he wrote off a sterling lead goes to the regulator by Friday. Chase Winslow. Stays. On calls. Sir, he's the proximate. He stays. Write down that I overruled you. Callie Marsh. Ethan Carter looked at window 3. Callie Marsh reports to you, he said. Helen's pen stopped. Sir. Effective now, she's got 141 names in a notebook in a car, and she's the only person in this company who knows which ones are real. She's not a teller anymore. She's your first call every morning until this is finished. Callie said, I don't, sir. I don't have a degree. You've got a notebook, Ethan said. That's better. At 4:35, Helen Okonjo said the last name on her list. Ethan Carter. The lobby went still. Sir. She said item 19, consent agenda, board vote. If we hand that over voluntarily, you're the story, not Halloway, not Vance, you. It'll be your name and your photograph and the number 4106, and every plaintiff's lawyer in 6 states will have it printed on a poster board by Monday. Ethan Carter looked at his daughter. Lily was standing by the bench with her library book against her chest, and she had been standing there for 7 hours, and she had not asked to go home once. Lily, he said, come here. She came. Everybody in this room is about to watch me decide something, he said, and I want you close because in about 20 years, somebody's going to tell you I was a good man, and I want you to know exactly how much of that is true. He looked up at Helen. Hand it over. Sir. Hand it over, Helen, all of it. Item 19, the slide from Columbus, the plaque with my signature on it, the transcript of what I said on that stage, especially the transcript. That transcript is the single most damaging. That transcript is the cause, Ethan said. At 4:38 in the afternoon, Helen Okonjo wrote 4 words on a legal pad and underlined them twice, and later in a deposition, a lawyer would ask her to read them out loud, and she would. Client instructed full disclosure. At 4:40, Ethan Carter turned to the room. One more thing, and then everybody gets back to work because there's 26 people here who still need their banking done. Nobody moved. I want Walter Reese's number. Callie said, I have it. Of course you do. Ethan almost smiled. Give it to me. Sir. Do you want me to call him? No, Ethan said. I want his address. His address. Because he came here 4 times. Ethan put his notebook back in his jacket pocket. It's my turn to drive. At 5:04, the truck pulled up outside a house on Delmar Street with a ramp built over the front steps, and Walter Reese did not answer the door for a long time because Walter Reese did not get up fast anymore and because nobody good had knocked on that door in about 4 months. When he opened it, he had the cane in one hand and the chain still on. Help you. Mr. Reese, my name is Ethan Carter. Uh-huh. I was at the bank this morning, Whitaker Street. I was sitting on the bench when you came in. Walter Reese looked at him through a 4-inch gap. The canvas jacket, the burn on the cuff, the 8-year-old standing on the ramp holding a library book. You the fella they dumped the papers on. Yes, sir. Huh. Something in Walter's face moved. They get you sorted. And Ethan Carter, standing on a stranger's porch, said, No, sir, I came about you. At 5:06, Walter Reese took the chain off. He didn't invite them in. He came out. That was the thing. He came out onto his own porch and shut the door behind him quiet, and Ethan understood immediately and completely why. My wife's asleep, Walter said. She sleeps at 5. It's the medication. I won't be loud. You won't be long either. Walter lowered himself onto a plastic chair with both hands on the cane. Say your piece. $32 a month, Ethan said. Since March. Debited twice on the 4th. You filed 2 disputes. Both were marked resolved. The first one closed in 11 minutes. The second one closed in 6. Walter Reese sat very still. How do you know that? Because I own the bank. At 5:07, Walter Reese laughed. It went on for a while. It wasn't a nice laugh, and it wasn't a mean one either. It was the laugh of a 76-year-old man who has been told a great many things by a great many people in suits, and has learned exactly what all of it is worth. Sure you do. Yes, sir. You own the bank. Walter wiped his eye with the back of his wrist. Mister, I poured that sidewalk. 38 years I did concrete in this town, and I did the sidewalk out front of that building in 1979. And I'll tell you what, nobody who owns that bank has ever knocked on this door. That's true. So what is this? This a lawsuit thing? Somebody's suing him and you want me to sign something? No. Then what? I came to say I'm sorry, Ethan said, and to give you $128. At 5:09, Walter Reese stopped laughing. 128. 32 4 times. You did the math. I did the math. Walter Reese looked out at the street for a long moment. Mister, he said, I don't want your $128. Sir, no, now listen. Listen to me. He turned, and his voice had changed, and Ethan Carter, who had faced down 4,106 complaints that afternoon, felt something in his chest go tight. I got the $128. I got it. My daughter sends me money, and I don't want it, and I take it. That's not Mister. You think I went down there 4 times over $128. No, sir, I don't. Then why do you think I went? Because it was wrong. Because it was wrong. Walter's cane came up and hit the porch once. Because it was wrong, and I told him it was wrong, and every single time some kid looked at a computer and told me I was mistaken about my own life. At 5:11, Ethan Carter sat down on the top step of a stranger's ramp in a canvas jacket and put his head down for a second. Say it again, he said. What? That last part. Told me I was mistaken about my own life. Walter shrugged. That's all it is. That's the whole thing. Ain't about money. Never was. You got a machine down there that tells old men they're confused. Yes, sir. And you own it. Yes, sir. Well, Walter Reese sat back. Then you got a hell of a problem, don't you? At 5:13, Lily Carter said, Mr. Reese. Both men turned. Yes, honey. My dad wrote you down. He what? Lily held up the hardware store notebook. She'd been holding it the whole time, and neither of them had noticed. 9:44, she read. B39. Resolved. He said 38 years. The porch was quiet. He wrote it at 9:44 this morning, Lily said. That's before anything happened. That's before they laughed at him. He wrote you down first. Walter Reese looked at that 8-year-old for a long time. Then he said to Ethan, without taking his eyes off her, "You raised that one right." "Her mother did." "Where's her mother?" "She's been gone 9 years. Walter Reese nodded slowly and reached over and took the notebook out of Lily's hands, with both of his big hands, broken hands, concrete hands, and looked at a page of times written in pen. 9:44, he said. "Yes, sir. Nobody in that building looked at me for 9 years, mister. 9 years I've been banking there." His thumb moved across the page. "And you wrote down the time." At 5:16, Walter Reese handed the notebook back and said, "All right, what do you want from me?" "I want to know something, and I don't have any right to ask it." "Ask it anyway." "When you walked out this morning," Ethan said, "after he told you the case was closed, you stopped at the door. About a second. Why?" Walter Reese's face went somewhere. "You saw that." "I saw it." "Nobody sees that." "I was looking." And Walter Reese, 76 years old, said, "Because I was trying to decide if I was going to come back a 5th time." At 5:18, Ethan Carter said, "Were you?" "No." The word landed like a dropped tool. "No," Walter said again. "That was it. That was the last one. I'd already told Dot in the car. I said, Dot, that's the last one, we'll just eat it. $32 ain't worth what it costs me to walk in there." He looked up. "That's what I stopped for. I stopped because I was quitting, and I wanted to look at the place one more time before I did." Ethan Carter did not say anything for 11 seconds. "Mr. Reese." "Walter." "Walter, I need you to do something for me, and you're going to say no. Try me. Come back a 5th time." At 5:20, Walter Reese said, "The hell for." "Because there's a young man at that branch named Chase Winslow who's going to spend the next 6 months calling 214 people and apologizing," Ethan said. "And you're number one. And he can do it on the phone, and it'll be fine, and he'll feel terrible, and he'll get better at it, and in a year, he'll be a decent banker. So that's not enough," Ethan said. "He needs to watch you walk across that floor with a cane, because he watched you do it this morning, and he waited, like a red light." Walter Reese sat there. "You're asking me to go back in there," he said, "so a kid can learn something." "Yes." "Mister, I'm 76 years old. I don't owe that boy an education." "No, sir, you don't." "So why would I?" And Ethan Carter said, "Because of the next old man." At 5:23, Walter Reese looked out at his street for a full minute. "Same kid," he said. "The one who told me it was resolved. Same kid. He know I'm coming?" "No." "Good." Walter Reese put both hands on the cane and pushed himself up out of that plastic chair, and it took him 4 seconds, and it cost him something, and he did it anyway. 9 o'clock, not 8. I don't do 8. 9 o'clock. "And mister," he pointed the cane, "I ain't taking your $128 in a check with a letter. If you're giving it to me, you look me in the eye and count it into my hand, and then it's done, and then you don't ever call me again. That's the deal." "That's the deal," Ethan said. At 5:24, Walter Reese said, "One more thing." "Yes, sir." "That kid this morning, the one that dumped your papers." Walter's eyes narrowed. "Is he the same one?" "Yes." "So he did me and then he did you inside of 2 hours?" "Yes, sir." "Huh." Walter Reese thought about that. "Then I want to be there when he calls the woman." "What woman?" "The one with the babies," Walter said. "I was still in the parking lot. I saw her come out. She sat in a Corolla for 20 minutes before she could drive." He turned and put his hand on his own doorknob. 9 o'clock, mister. And bring the kid a chair. He's gonna need to sit down." At 9:02 the next morning, Walter Reese walked into branch 14 of Sterling National Bank. Cane, plant, step, cane, plant, step, all the way across that marble floor. And this time, everybody watched. Chase Winslow came out from behind his desk before Walter was 6 feet in, and he had been on the phone until 11:40 the night before, and had made 9 calls, and had been screamed at by 4 people, and his eyes were red, and his hands weren't steady. "Mr. Reese." "That's right. Sir, I'm—" Chase stopped. "Take your time, son. I'm the man who told you your case was resolved. I know who you are." "Sir, it wasn't." Chase's voice went. "It wasn't resolved. It was closed. Somebody closed it in 6 minutes from a terminal in that office and put a teller's name on it, and it never got looked at by anybody ever, and I knew that screen said resolved, and I didn't ask one single question about it, because asking questions took time, and I had a number." Walter Reese stood there on his cane. "And you laughed at that man in the jacket?" "Yes, sir." "Loud?" "Yes, sir, real loud." "In front of his kid?" Chase Winslow said in front of his kid. At 9:06, Walter Reese said, "Look at me." Chase looked at him. "How old are you?" 28. "You got a father?" "He's dead." "What did he do?" "He worked at a plant," Chase said. 31 years. It closed on a Thursday. They sent a fax. Walter Reese nodded slowly. "Then you know," he said. "Sir, you know?" The cane came up an inch and went back down. "Don't you stand there and tell me you didn't know. You watched 'em do it to your daddy. You know exactly what it feels like to be on this side of that counter and have some son of a bitch in a tie tell you the paper says different." He leaned in. "So the question ain't whether you knew, son. The question is why you did it anyway." Chase Winslow had no answer. "I'll tell you why," Walter said. "'Cause it's warm over there." At 9:08, Chase Winslow started crying in the middle of the lobby, standing up with his hands at his sides in front of the entire branch. And Walter Reese let him. That was the thing. He didn't pat him. He didn't say it's all right. He stood there on his cane, 76 years old, and let a 28-year-old man cry because Walter Reese had learned somewhere around 1981 that the only real apology is the one you have to stand in. At 9:11, he said, "Okay, that's enough." Chase wiped his face. "Now fix it." "Sir, fix it, right now, my account, 4 months 32 a month." Walter Reese put his hand on the counter, that same counter, same spot. "You got a computer, fix it." Chase Winslow went to his desk and did it in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. At 9:13, Walter Reese looked at the screen, turned around toward him, and said out loud to nobody in particular, 90 seconds. The whole lobby heard it. "I came in here 4 times, Walter said. 4 times 400 minutes, and I sat in the car outside 3 of them because I was too tired to drive. And it took 90 seconds. He looked up. 90 seconds and a boy who wasn't scared. At 9:15, Ethan Carter counted $128 into Walter Reese's hand. 6 20s, 1 5, 3 1s. He counted them out loud, one at a time, and Walter Reese watched him do it, and 40 people watched them both, and when it was done, Walter folded the bills once and put them in his shirt pocket. "Done," Walter said. "Done. You don't call me again." "No, sir." "Good." Walter Reese turned around and got 2 steps and stopped and said without turning back, "Ethan?" "Sir?" "That's a good jacket. Don't let him talk you out of it." And he walked out, and Ray Hollis got the door. At 9:22, Chase Winslow sat down at his desk and dialed a number in Denise Alvarado's file. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Ma'am, my name is Chase Winslow. I work at Sterling National on Whitaker. I'm the man who was at the second window yesterday morning when you came in with your kids." There was a silence on that phone that lasted 9 seconds. Then Denise Alvarado said, "What do you want?" "Ma'am, I want to tell you that the $144 in overdraft fees was reversed at 7:15 this morning, and it's back in your account." "What?" "And I want to tell you that the person who told you to lower your voice was wrong, and you weren't loud, and I was 30 feet away, And I could barely hear you, and she said it anyway because it's a thing people in this building say to make somebody into a problem. Denise Alvarado did not say anything. And ma'am, your son asked you a question in our lobby, Chase said, and his voice went completely, and every single person in this building heard him ask it, and every single person looked at the floor, including me. And I've been up all night about it, and I'm going to be up about it for a long time, and that's not your problem, that's mine. Stop. He stopped. Just stop. Denise Alvarado's voice was shaking. Is this real? Is the money actually because I've got a thing at 11, and if this is it's real. Ma'am, log in right now. I'll wait. 41 seconds. Then he heard her start to cry. It's there, she said. Yes, ma'am. It's there. And then, furious out of nowhere, and it hit him like a fist. Do you know what I did? Do you know what I did last night because of $144 I didn't fill my prescription? I looked at it in the parking lot at Kroger, and I put it back. So don't call me up and be sorry at me. Mister, don't you dare. Yes, ma'am. Don't you dare be sorry at me. Yes, ma'am. She screamed at Chase Winslow for 4 minutes, and Chase Winslow said, yes, ma'am, 31 times, and did not defend himself once, and at the end of it he said, ma'am, thank you. And she hung up on him, and he sat there with his hand on the phone. And then he pulled up the next name. At 9:31, Callie Marsh, who was no longer a teller, walked out to Chase's desk and set a piece of paper down. Anthony Boyd, she said. The flag's cleared. It took 9 seconds. Chase looked at it. 9 seconds, he said. 9 seconds. It was a soft flag from a 2019 fraud sweep, and it should have auto-expired in 90 days, and it didn't, because a patch broke in 2020, and nobody ever ran the cleanup. Callie's jaw was tight. There's 1,100 of them. 1,100. Company-wide. 1,100 accounts with a dead flag on them from 6 years ago. She looked at him. 1,100 people getting told it doesn't say by somebody who's looking right at it. At 9:34, Chase Winslow said, I want that list. Chase. Callie. I want the list. He was already reaching for the phone. 9 seconds each, 1,100 of them. That's 165 minutes. He looked up. That's an afternoon. That's less than one afternoon, and it's been 6 years. Callie Marsh stood there for a second. Then she said, I'll get you the list. At 11:20 that morning in a conference room 400 miles away, Helen Okonjo handed a regulator a box. In the box was a transcript of a speech given in Columbus 2 years earlier by a man in a canvas jacket who had said the sentence, I don't ever want to hear, that a customer had to come back twice. And on top of the box, on the very top, was a plaque with his signature on it. Helen Okonjo would testify 11 months later that her client had instructed her to put the plaque on top so it would be the first thing they saw. The fine was $14 million. Ethan Carter did not contest it. At 2:15 on a Thursday in October, Marcus Vance sat across a table from a U.S. attorney and told the truth for 6 hours. And at the end of it, the U.S. attorney said, Mr. Vance, for the record, did the majority owner of Sterling Financial Group ever instruct you to suppress complaints? And Marcus Vance said no. Did he know about the override? He voted for it. Item 19. Consent agenda. Did he know what it was? And Marcus Vance said no. And that's worse. He took 19 months. Ethan Carter drove down for the sentencing and sat in the third row and did not say a word to anybody. And when they took Marcus out, he stood up and Marcus saw him standing, and that was all of it. That was the entire conversation. A man standing up in a courtroom. Robert Holloway took 4 years. Diane Pruitt talked first the way Ethan had told her to, and got 11 months and lost her license. And in the deposition said one thing that ended up in every newspaper in Ohio. Nobody ever asked me how I got the number down. They just sent me a plaque. At 8:40 on a Tuesday in March, 7 months later, Ethan Carter walked into branch 14 of Sterling National Bank wearing the same jacket. Same burn on the cuff. He took a number from the machine. B. 19. He sat on the bench by the window, and at 8:44, a young woman he had never seen before in his life came out from behind the counter and walked all the way across that marble floor to him. "Sir, you don't have to wait over there. I've got a number." "You do, but there's nobody in front of you, and I've got a window open." She smiled at him. "You've been standing all morning, huh? I can tell by the boots." Ethan Carter looked at her. "How can you tell by the boots? My dad's got the same ones." She held out her hand for his folder. "Come on, let's get you sorted." At 8:46, she read his loan package. All of it, not 6 lines. She turned pages and made a small noise at one of them and said, "Okay, hold on, your DSCR's fine. Why are you who told you to file this at a branch?" "Nobody." "Sir, this should go to commercial. This is a commercial file." She was already typing. "Okay, don't go anywhere. I'm calling Terrence." Terrence Poole. He does small business here now." She kept typing. "He used to have a lawn company, 6 trucks." Ethan Carter sat very still. "He works here. 2 years. He's the best one we've got." She glanced up. "He's got a whole thing he says. He says he came in here 11 times and got told about the portal 11 times. So now he's got a rule: nobody says the word portal on his floor. He'll actually stop you. You'll be mid-sentence and he'll go, 'Nope, say it in English.'" "Does he?" Ethan's voice was not entirely steady. "He's a pain," she said fondly. "He's also the reason our small business approvals are up 40%, so nobody says anything." At 8:51, the young woman said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you okay?" Ethan looked at her. "Why?" "Because you've got a face like somebody just told you something," she shrugged. "Sorry. My mom says I ask people things I shouldn't." "No," Ethan said. "Your mom's wrong." At 8:54, he said, "What's your name?" "Marisol." "How long have you been here, Marisol?" 5 months. "Do you like it?" She thought about it. Actually thought about it, which was the thing that finished him. "Yeah," she said. "It's kind of intense, honestly. There's this whole thing here like everybody's really weird about the clock, like if somebody's been waiting 9 minutes, somebody comes and tells you." And there's a woman. Callie, she runs, I don't even know what her title is. She runs the complaint thing. She calls you. Personally. If you close something in under an hour, she calls you and asks what you did, and you have to tell her out loud on the phone. Marisol laughed. "I was terrified of her for a month. Now I kind of want to be her." "Is she good?" "She's scary," Marisol said. "She's 24. At 8:57, Ethan Carter said, "One more question." "Shoot. What happens if somebody comes in here who looks like they don't have any money?" Marisol stopped typing. "That's a weird question." "It is." She looked at him for a second, really looked the way nobody in that building had looked at him on a Tuesday in July. "Okay," she said. "So there's a thing on the wall in the break room. It's not a plaque. It's a printed sheet in a frame, which is honestly kind of tacky, but nobody'll take it down." "What's it say?" "It says, if people only respect me because I'm rich, then they never respected people at all." Ethan Carter did not move. "And there's a name under it." "No," Marisol said. "That's the thing. There's no name. There's just a time." "A time. Yeah, it says 9:44. She shrugged and went back to typing. "Nobody knows what it means. Terrence knows. He won't say. He just goes, 'Somebody wrote down an old man.'" At 9:04, Marisol printed something and slid it across the counter. "Okay, you're approved to move to commercial. Terrence will call you today, and I mean today he'll call you before 3, or I'll walk over there myself." She smiled. "Anything else I can do for you, Mr. Carter?" Ethan Carter looked at his own name on the paper, and Marisol had not blinked, not once. She had typed his name into a system 4 times, and it had never once occurred to her to look up. "No," he said. "That's everything." At 9:06, he stood up. Ray Hollis was at the door. He was 62 now, and he had a new radio and a title. He was branch operations. Whatever that meant. It meant they'd tripled his salary, and Ethan had signed it himself, and he saw the canvas jacket, and his whole face changed. He didn't say the name. He just opened the door the way he'd opened it 400 times for Robert Halloway, and 400 times for everybody else, and said, "Have a good one, sir." "Ray." "Yes, sir." Ethan stopped in the doorway. "You told her no." Ray Hollis looked at the floor, and then out at the street, and then back. "I've been thinking about that," he said. 11 years, I never told anybody no. Not once. And then one Tuesday I did." He shifted his weight. "You want to know why?" "Yes. 'Cause you sat down," Ray said. "You picked up your papers, and you sat back down. And I stood over there, and I watched you do it. And I thought, I have never once in my life seen a man do that. Ever. Every man I ever saw get shamed like that either swung or ran." He shook his head. "You sat down and got out a notebook. And I stood on that wall for another 4 hours, and I thought, if that man can sit down, I can stand up." At 9:09, Ethan Carter walked out onto the sidewalk that Walter Reese had poured in 1979. Lily was in the truck. 9 years old now, in the front seat, legs long enough to reach. "Well," she said, "she helped me." "Did she know?" "No." "Did you tell her?" "No." Lily looked at her father for a second. "Dad," she said, "you're doing the face." "I know." "The one where you're thinking something you're not going to tell me." Ethan Carter started the truck. "No," he said. "I'll tell you this one." "Okay, that girl in there is 22 years old, and she's never met me, and she's never heard of me, and she treated me like a human being at 8:44 in the morning for no reason at all." He put his hands on the wheel. "And that's it. That's the whole thing. That's what $14 million and 2 prison sentences and a man losing his best friend bought. One kid in a lobby being decent to a stranger in a bad jacket. And Lily, listen to me, that's worth it. That's not a consolation prize. That's the actual thing. That was always the actual thing." Lily thought about it. "Dad?" "Yeah." 9:44. Ethan looked at her. "It's on the wall," she said. "You put it on the wall." "I did." "Why not 11:42? Lily said. "That's when he said it. That's when they laughed at you." And Ethan Carter, who owned the building, said, "Because 11:42 is about me. 9:44 is about Walter." He pulled out onto Whitaker Street. "Anybody can build a company that respects the man who owns it," he said. "That's not an accomplishment, sweetheart. That's just fear with better manners. The only thing that ever counts, the only thing is what happens in that lobby on a Tuesday when nobody with any power is watching, and the man at the counter has nothing to give you and can't hurt you and will never be able to do a single thing for you as long as he lives." Lily was quiet for a block. "And they're nice to him anyway," she said. "They're nice to him anyway." "Because it's right." "Because it's right," Ethan said. "Not because it's smart. Not because somebody's watching. Because it's right, and because he's a man, and because that's supposed to be enough." At 9:14, on a Tuesday morning in March, a 2009 Ford with 220,000 miles on it drove past a bank, and nobody inside it looked up, and nobody had any idea. And that was the point. Walter Reese died the following spring, 78 years old, in his own bed with Dot holding his hand. His daughter found a hardware store notebook page folded in his shirt pocket at the funeral home. One line in pen in a man's handwriting. 9:44. B-39. Resolved. He said 38 years. She had no idea what it meant. She asked around. Nobody knew. She keeps it in a frame. Because a man will forget the money you gave him, and he will forget the apology, and he will forget your name and your face, and the color of your jacket, but he will remember until the day he dies, the exact moment somebody finally wrote him down. That's what respect is. It was never about